Can you take 3 copies of a structure deck, mash them together, and attempt to recreate the magic the Monarchs had? Can you find success with just structure decks? Well, we're about to find out. Welcome to Success with a Structure Deck. My name is Puzzlemino and welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoy your stay. For those of you whom this is your first time here, in this series we take structure decks you can buy off store shelves, build a deck, and see what happens. We'll cover the important monsters, spells, and traps featured in the structure deck, showcase off some combos you can do with the deck, and then go through a deck profile before taking the deck to a tournament. After I summarize my performance, I'll give you a few suggestions on what to buy next should you want to invest further. But what are we going to showcase today? Well, steel thy vigor and don't go hollow, we're descending into the throes of edge and into the Dark World. The Dark World deck is focused on triggering effects through discarding. If you're familiar with the effects of modern Yu-Gi-Oh cards, you'll notice a distinct lack of a certain clause in their text. Practically every Dark World monster lacks a once per turn clause on their card text, meaning if you can trigger the card multiple times in a turn, you can effectively loop the card over and over again, reaping its benefits time and time again. This will make more sense during the combo showcase, but speaking about the monsters, let's talk about them. Let's begin with the lowest monster on the pecking ladder, the level 1 Ceruli, Guru of Dark World. Ceruli's discard effect allows you to special summon itself on your opponent's side of the field. Then when the card is special summoned, it forces your opponent, aka you now, to discard a card. This doesn't sound good on its own, giving your opponent a +2 in the form of a monster and having you discard a card, but that's okay, because the Dark World monsters' discard effects become enhanced when they're discarded by an opponent's card effect rather than your own. In that sense, Ceruli becomes an enabler of the deck, to not only allow you to discard a Dark World monster, but an enhancer, granting a powerful boon to your Dark World effects. The next monster we'll talk about is Genta, Gateman of Dark World. Unlike the other Dark World monsters we'll talk about, Genta discards itself as a cost in order to search the field spell, the Gates of the Dark World, which while on the field boosts the attack and defense of fiends on the field by 300 and has the ability to, non-hard once per turn, banish a fiend engraved for the ability to discard a fiend in order to draw a new card. It triggers your Dark World discards, and it also triggers the second effect of Genta, which when it's banished can special summon itself, but you can only special summon Genta once per turn. These two cards together set up other cards, much like Ceruli, to discard cards and enables their effects. A great example of the enhanced discard effects is the abilities of Warlord and Wu Lord, Silva and Golda, which when they're discarded, special summon themselves, but when it's in the form of an opponent's effect, Golda can destroy up to 2 cards on your opponent's field, and Silva can force your opponent to send 2 cards from their hand to the bottom of the deck. Remember what I said about the Dark Worlds not having once per turn clauses? If you're able to resolve Silva's enhanced effect multiple times in a turn, you can force your opponent to start their turn with only a singular card in their hand, which at that point it's highly unlikely they'll be able to win. But how are we going to search for these cards? Well, we can use the discard effect of Snow, Unlight of Dark World. Snow's discard effect allows us to add any Dark World card from our deck to our hand, not just a monster, but spells and traps as well. The enhanced discard nets us a plus in card advantage by special summoning a monster from our opponent's graveyard. While the enhanced effect is nice, we only really care about the first effect to search, and again, I must remind you that this effect to search isn't a once per turn. It's like they never put you to 1. We've covered most of the small legions of the Dark World, but no Kingdom of Darkness would be complete without a king, and in our deck, there's 3. The first, the eldest of the 3, Grapha, Dragon Lord of Dark World. Grapha's discard effect is to target a card your opponent controls and destroys it. Already a powerful effect on its own, but if you're able to discard it off of your opponent's effect, it lets you look at a random card in their hand, and if it's a monster, you can special summon it. This alone would make the card great in terms of the Dark World monsters, but the main deck Lord cards all have an additional effect. When they're in the graveyard, you can special summon them by returning a Dark World card you control to the hand, besides a copy of itself. This is what allows you to loop cards you've used back into your hand, so cards like Genta, Silva, and Golda, who special summon themselves, can be used to put these cards onto the field. Don't worry, Grapha doesn't rule the Dark World alone. The other main lord, Rainbow, over King of Dark World, on discard allows you to search for a level 5 or higher Dark World monster and add it to hand. Then the enhanced effect allows you to special summon a level 4 or lower Dark World monster from your deck or graveyard to either field. Simple plussing and card advantage off a single card that's easy to loop thanks to its lord effect. Then finally, with the help of a super pushed fusion card in the form of Dark World Accession, we can banish, or discard from hand, a Grapha and a Dark Monster to summon Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World. Grapha's main effect is whenever a monster spell or trap is activated while you have a card in hand, you can pseudo-negate that effect and turn it into your opponent discards a card. Ceruli who? Grapha can turn any card into a Ceruli. On top of that, if Grapha goes to the grave because of a card effect or battle, you can special summon the main deck Grapha from graveyard or banished. Then both players are forced to discard a card. For your opponent, sure, this can be an inconvenience, but for us, we thrive in the inconvenience and turn it into our power. This is so cheesy and I don't care. That covers all the main archetype monsters in the lineup. Now let's cover the spells and traps. All the spells and traps we play in the deck, with few notable exceptions, grants us the ability to discard cards for their effects. We'll skip over the field spell since we already talked about it, so we'll cover the continuous spell, Dark World Archives. Archives allows us to discard a Dark World monster to have all Dark World monsters on the field gain attack equal to that card's level times 100 until the end of the turn, instantly allowing you to ditch a big Lord card to grant your monsters a crazy boost in power. However, the nuttiness of this card doesn't stop there. If a Fiend-type monster is discarded by the effect of a Dark World card, any one, spell or trap like Archive, you're able to discard an additional card, non-specific, to draw 2 cards, replenishing card advantage off of most interactions you'll have, including on your opponent's turn. We also play Dark World Puppetry in our deck, which allows us to DD Crow at least 3 cards in the graveyard, then after that effect resolves, we must discard a Fiend. Like the other spell cards, Puppetry allows you to discard within its card effect, which is all it takes for a Rogue Ceruli to get to discarding even more. Lastly, in the trap section, we play Dark World Punishment to negate the summons of our opponent's monsters. It also has an effect similar to Return of the Dragon Lords to protect our Dark World monsters from destruction by battle or card effect. That's all of the Dark World cards we play in the deck, but that's not everything included in the structure deck. Included in the deck we have the Danger monsters, Danger Mothman, Danger Thunderbird, Danger Tsuchinoko, and Danger Bigfoot. They all have the effect of revealing themselves in the hand, then forcing your opponent to discard a random card in your hand. If they hit the monster, each Danger has a unique discard effect to help mitigate the loss. But if they miss the monster, it special summons itself and draws you a card. We're banking on the hope they miss and instead hit our Dark World monsters, providing the basic theory behind the ever-infamous Danger Dark World deck that was taking names back in 2018, and is the loose basis as to their inclusion as accessible reprints in the structure deck. This deck has explosive OTK potential, but with the cards described above, doesn't exactly do anything going first. Except for Big Grapha, he's a negate. However, Konami included a great side deck option in those cases when you're going first. In fact, they included a few. Paleozoic Dinomishcus' inclusion into the deck feels out of place at first. In a deck with nothing but a bunch of fiends, why would you throw in a trap that can summon itself as an aqua monster when it's in the grave? Well, it's for the simple reason that to activate Dinomishcus' effect, you discard a card in the effect to banish a card. That's a sharp diversion from most other Neg 1 cards in the game, and we use that wrinkle to our advantage. Another big card that we play in our side going first is Deck Devastation Virus, which allows us to tribute one of our big monsters to remove our opponent's small monsters for 3 turns. Once you figure out the average stats of the monsters your opponent is playing, if you can hit most of them with this virus, you'll be put in a much greater advantage as they, preferably, can't get their engines going while you've still got all the gas. This also has the added benefit of getting rid of most hand traps in the game, as they usually trade their powerful effects and tempo swing for the downside of having weak stats on field. Unless your name is Skullmeister or people call you Thanos Dragon. The last trap card we'll mention in this section is Skill Drain, a card that normally people look at with disgust, but we laugh at and scoff. A select few of our Dark World monsters have effects on the field, so once you've set up the board, flip your Skill Drain, and if your opponent doesn't have the out, use your giant statted monsters and claim the dub. Finally, the last card we'll mention is the biggest blowout card of them all, criminally ignored last format due to tier limits being a problem, but now that they're gone, the stage is set for us to main deck card destruction, which allows both players to discard their entire hand and draw cards up to the number discarded. This triggers our Dark Worlds, Dangers, hell, even the Dark World spells and traps have effects engraved, so extremely powerful and currently at 1 and staying there for a while. Most duels with this deck focus on properly timing the card destruction, making sure that you get the most out of it while balancing the benefits it gives to your opponents. Too early, your opponent might trigger floating effects and gain more advantage than you. Too late, you might not live long enough to use it. This deck may have explosive combos and massive amounts of resource loop, but more than anything, this deck is about timing and weighing up your resources properly to set up and systematically dissect your opponent's board card by card until they're left with nothing to stop the invasion of the Dark World. As such, there's not exactly a set-in-stone combo that the deck has, as it all really depends on the grip you're given, the luck of the dangers, and your own creativity as a pilot into what ways you want to extend. However, that isn't to say there aren't any guaranteed resource loops you can help utilize to get your strategy going, and this is what we'll feature in the combo showcase. Welcome back to the combo showcase. Like I said, there isn't exactly a main combo that you can do with this deck, but there is one resource loop that you have to know if you are going to play this deck, and that is going to be the resource loop with Genta and Rainbow. Now, this isn't exactly a combo per se, as you really don't need to have these cards in any specific place, like your hand or your graveyard or something like that. You just need to have them somewhere and then be able to have access to them in order to do this quote-unquote combo. So, allow me to show you what's going on. We'll start off by using the effect of Genta in order to discard itself to search for the Gates of the Dark World. We'll then activate the Gates of the Dark World's effect, allowing us to banish the Genta, discarding the Rainbow, and then drawing a random card to our hand. This card doesn't matter for this combo, we're literally only focusing on the cards that are face up right now. These cards are extra cards. So, back to where we were. We will activate the effect of Rainbow as Chainlink 1 and then Chain Block using Genta. So Genta will special summon itself and then Rainbow will activate its effect to search for Grapha. We will then activate the effect of Rainbow Engrave to shuffle back the Genta back to our hand in order to special summon a Rainbow back to the field. We'll then activate the effect of Genta again, discarding itself again to search for another Gates of the Dark World, and then we'll reactivate the effect of the Gates of the Dark World. We'll banish the Genta again, one more time, to activate the effect of the Gates of the Dark World to draw another card. Again, this card is random, don't worry. Then we will effect of, oh sorry, we forgot. We were supposed to discard the Grapha on that effect. And then lastly, we will activate the effect of Grapha to shuffle back the Rainbow back into our hand and putting a Grapha on field. So this is what we end on. We end on a Grapha on field, a Rainbow, and 2 extra cards that weren't there before. So effectively, we have a +2 in card advantage. Now, this combo can be practically done off of almost any hand, but the easiest way to do it is with Genta and literally any one of the Lord cards. And then you can also, if you don't have any of these pieces, you can use the Snow to search out one of the pieces that you need, or you can just be lucky and top deck into it with a Dark or the Danger or a Dark World card. There's a lot of possibilities for this deck to pop off with the cards you're given. So, what exactly are we actually cooking with anyways? Well, lay out your arms. Let's get to the deck profile. Okay, so welcome back. We're here with the deck profile. I personally think that we did pretty good with this deck for only $30. But you guys can roast me all in the comments and tell me how bad I did when it comes to my deck making choices. But you know what? For now, I'll just tell you what I did. So, we're starting off with our Dark World monsters. We played 1 copy of Parl, which I neglected to talk about in the showcase, And frankly, he really doesn't do enough to merit enough attention. If anything, I honestly would cut this and then I would not notice it at all for the main combos of the deck. Next, we're on 2 copies of Ceruli. Most people usually play 1. I play 2 because of the fact that if you Ceruli a rainbow, the rainbow's effect is going to activate, allowing you to search for a Silva and then special summon on your opponent's side of the field another Ceruli. Then, from there, you can activate that second Ceruli's effect to discard the Silva you just searched. Then you loop your opponent for 2. So it basically turns your rainbows into extra copies of Silva loops, which can prove pretty useful. Next, we go on to the searchers of the deck. 3 copies of Snow and 3 copies of Genta. For obvious reasons, we're playing these at 3 because we want to see them as many times as humanly possible. Next, we're on to the secondary lords. We are on 2 copies of Silva and then 1 copy of Gold. I never really made Gold once, but I actually was able to Silva hand loop people a few times. Finally, to round out our Dark World monsters, we've got triple copies of Grapha and triple copies of Rainbow. I shouldn't really need to explain why you want to play 3 copies of each of these cards. They're really kind of self-explanatory as they kind of tie the deck together as a whole. Alright, let's move on to the Danger monsters. I like to play 3 copies of Danger Mothman because both of its effects are effects that we honestly want in this deck. The discard effect, when it is discarded, allows us to draw 1 and then discard 1, which is basically Dark World dealings on legs. So if we are able to trigger it, cool. If we're not able to trigger it, then we get a +1. It's great. Next, we're on 2 copies of Danger Thunderbird. I would actually think about siding in a 3rd copy of Danger Thunderbird because now that I think about it, this deck really doesn't do that well against back row decks. So there really isn't that much back row hate that we have inside of the structure decks. So I would consider probably running this card in at 3, maybe. I'm playing around with it. Maybe you can try it out, see how you do. Then finally, to round out our Danger monsters, we're actually on triple copies of Danger Bigfoot. The Danger Bigfoot's super self-explanatory. The thing that you probably are asking yourself is, why am I not playing Tsuchinoko? Well, the reason is because all of these other Danger monsters have effects that we are looking for on the discard, right? We would love to have the Mothman effect to activate. We would love to have the Thunderbird effect on activate. We would love to have the Bigfoot effect on activate, but we honestly don't need the Tsuchinoko to resolve because of the fact that our deck already puts up so much of a board presence that it really doesn't matter if we have an extra 1200 on the field. That's going to round out for our monster lineup, which is primarily the most of it. So let's move on to the spells and traps. The spells and traps we're playing triple copies of Gates. I don't need to explain why you are playing 3 copies of Gates. You just loop this to hell and then you win the game. If you are able to resolve 3 copies of Gates, you're pretty much golden and you are set for life when it comes to resources, and there's nothing that your opponent can do about it. Next, we're on triple copies of Dark World Archives. Dark World Archives is the replacement for Dark World Dealings, which allows you to draw 1 and discard 1, which is the effect that I was referencing with the Mothman. This is basically that, but on crack, because it also allows you to do this on your opponent's turn, technically, and allows you to draw 2 off of the 2 discards, which allows you to dig deeper into your deck. Super nice. Next, we're on triple copies of Dark World Archives. Dark World Archives is the way that we access the 1 fusion monster that is inside of this deck. However, in the graveyard, it also allows us to discard a fiend monster, which is actually pretty useful. And then to round out our spell lineup, we are on the 1 copy of Charge to the Dark World, on the fringe cases that we need to revive a level 4 engrave and then discard 1, and then the obvious card destruction. I am maining this right now because of the fact that tier elements are really not in the format anymore, and there's like not that many decks that can utilize a card destruction better than we can, so we're playing it in the main, and if I get humbled, then I get humbled, I guess. Lastly, to round out the main deck, we are on triple copies of Skill Drain in the main. This is a tech that I did not actually use going into this next tournament, and I'm going to explain it later, but essentially what it was is that I wanted to make my deck hard going second, just to show that it was possible, but now that I'm thinking about it in retrospect, that is an absolutely terrible idea. The main deck should really be kind of like the mid-range of both going first and going second cards. And then when you're actually siding, you'll be able to tailor make the deck into a going first or going second build. I went too much into one direction during the main deck and then wasn't able to commit fully to it because I didn't have cards that could deal with every single like variable that my opponent could ever have. But with a skill drain, we cover more of our bases that way. That way, then we're going first, we can set up a bit more of a presence and then flip a skill drain, and then our opponent is put in a weird situation where they have to clear my board and a skill drain at the same time. And it's just an option that I would love to have going into game one that I did not realize that I needed until after the tournament was over. That's going to cover our main deck. Now let's go into the extra deck. Gee, I wonder what card we're playing. That's the only card in the extra deck. That's it. I'm not really complaining. Dark World isn't really known for accessing big extra deck monsters. This was the newest card that came out inside of the new structure deck. So, of course, it's going to be a little bit lonely here. However, I would have appreciated just a little bit more of a toolbox that we could have had access to, and I'm going to reference this later on. But, you know what? Let's let bygones be bygones. I was able to do some impressive stuff with this deck, even though we were on 3 cards in the extra deck. Lastly, we'll go over the side deck that I was using during this event, and this is also a little bit changed up. I was actually main decking the Dark World Puppetries before I actually realized, hey, you know what, maybe I should probably side this because it really doesn't matter for most matchups. Like Fluwanderees, they don't care about this. Kashtira, they don't care about this. The only really matchups that do care about this are like my 3rd matchup and then like my 4th matchup. They were the only ones that really cared. Actually, sorry, I lied. My 2nd matchup and my 4th matchup were the only ones that really cared about having their cards in grave. Everything else didn't really matter. This card, Dragged Down into the Grave, not only gives us an ability to get rid of hand traps in my opponent's hand, but it also gives me hand knowledge, which is very important to learn how to play around all that stuff. So just in case I can't clear a certain hand trap, like I have to make a choice, I know what to play around should I have to leave one behind. And then lastly, to round out the going first traps that we play inside of the side deck, we're on triple copies of Dark World Punishment, which is basically our Solemn Judgment of the deck, and our Return of the Dragon Lords. Triple copies of Dino Mishkus actually came in clutch for our final matchup, and then Deck Devastation Virus came in clutch in our first matchup. So yeah, with the structure deck, you were actually given a pretty good ability to side deck fairly easily. It's not bad. Not exactly the best side deck in the world, but for 30 bucks, it's genuinely impressive what options you can tech into depending on the situation. That's going to round out our list. So, curious to see how we did? Well, wait no longer. Here we go. Editing. Woo! So how'd we end up doing this tournament? Well, unlike last time, I'm keeping you in suspense and going round by round. First, we went up against Makanko, an OTK deck focused around equip spells and crashing resistant monsters into our opponent on purpose to make them take damage from battle. We go second and our opponent goes full combo setting up their main Makanko. We then take our turn and realize we don't have an out to this in our main deck. Side? Sure, Deck Devi, Skill Drain, and Mishkus, but this was before I was maining the Skill Drain, so I really had no reliable out to that monster. We grind out for a bit, and we go to game 2 with a win under my opponent's belt. We go to our next grip, and... I'll try.
Stand by main.
Here, just for the people, so the people can see at home exactly what the hell I just drew into. There you go. This is sad. Now, Dark World normally doesn't brick. With a ratio pretty even between discard cards and discard fodder, you should be able to play out every hand you're given. However, if you're not able to get one or the other, you brick hard. If this was literally any other matchup, I would have scooped right then and there. But because Makankos require a monster to crash into, I decided to play it out and see if I could turn this duel around. It takes me a few turns, but I'm able to drop a skill drain on my opponent, and that disables all his zero attack monsters just long enough to swing the tempo back in my favor. We aren't able to take lethal until time was called, but because I was at a higher life point at the end of the game, I take the win. Because both me and my opponent took a win, we finished our round 1 with a draw on our record. But for realsies though, Michael totally won locals.
Oh! Nice. No, I'm gonna summon Fenrir right now.
Sure. Next, round 2 is up against Spicy, self-admitted Kashtira, which uses a Raid Raptor engine to facilitate the summon of Utopic Draco Future, a play very familiar to those who play Master Duel. He goes first and does the full combo to make the big boy and a Scareclaw Tryhard. We take our turn and pop the Tryhard before committing to the field, but we just aren't able to get over the Draco Future with the grip we got, so we move on to game 2. Game 2, we go first and set up the board, loop our opponent out of a few of their cards, and we're able to take the game after flipping a skill drain. I wasn't able to record game 3 sadly because the battery and the camera died, but the only thing that matters is that we walk away after taking the L, leaving us with a loss and a draw. Round 3, we go up against Ninjas, and game 1 we go first, and after setting up Big Graph on our field, it gets popped before we can react, and then we sputter out and die. Game 2, we go second, our opponent goes full combo when we try to break the board with our dangers and a Grapha in hand, but we just aren't able to pull it off, giving us a second loss on our record. Round 4, we have an anime duel. We're up against a Jaden Yuki deck, a deck built around elemental heroes, masked heroes, and the Neospatians. We win the die roll, but decide to go second because I was curious to see what he could do. If you want, next week this deck will be featured with a deck profile in the extra content section. In fact, go check out the extra content section. We post all the rounds that we have recorded in there. He goes full combo and sets up a board with a Sunrise, Absolute Zero, and Dark Law. The Sunrise boosts all the monsters on his field, and the Absolute Zero clears the board when it leaves, but the card I'm most concerned about is the Dark Law. Whenever any one of my cards are sent to the grave off a discard, it gets banished instead. It doesn't stop us from activating the effects, but now I have to dedicate resources, which aren't coming back anytime soon, to clear a big Dark Law on the field. It takes a Graphill discard, but luckily we're able to clear the Dark Law, and because we didn't use too much gas to do it... So now we move on to game 2. We side in hard going second, which isn't really that hard because our deck is built that way. Then we get hit with this.
That I expected.
Your choice. First or second?
I'm gonna go second.
Second? Okay.
That's fine. We're able to loop and set up a rainbow and set Dino Mishkus. My opponent goes for a Sunrise, and that gets instantly banished. Off the discard, we bin Ceruli, which lets us discard Silva, and that sends 2 of his fusion spells to the bottom of his deck. He's able to Miracle Fusion using the Ceruli I gave him, along with a Solid Soldier to make an Escuridao, sets a card, and then passes turn. We use Grapha over and over again, slowly popping card by card until we can push for game, giving us the win against the hero deck and avenging Baran in the anime, with us ending the night with a 1-2-1 record. So, the Dark World structure deck, funnily enough, wasn't the first time the Dark Worlds were in a structure deck. Same with the Monarch deck. The Emperor of Darkness structure deck was effectively a retrain of the Monarch strategy. So, is it any wonder that when they give the exact same retrain treatment to the Dark World structure deck, that they print out an amazing core strategy? Amazing deck to play, and for only $30, I'm absolutely impressed with the effectiveness of the core. However, that doesn't mean there's not room to improve. So here's a few cards under $10 that I recommend you pick up if you have some extra cash laying around after buying those structure decks. Last time I only recommended you 5 cards, and I was planning on doing the same here, but permit me, if I may, to make a controversial statement. Build the extra deck! I'm sorry, I got really heated there. Let me explain. The extra deck opens the floodgates to even wackier resource looping, hand fixing, and toolboxes that can help clear out problem cards that the deck's inherent destruction abilities can't handle on their own. The main deck core of this deck is good enough, so if you're going to put in any cards, pick up these 10 cards that are each less than $10. First off, Nightmare Unicorn, Phoenix, Cerberus, and Griffin allows you to use the massive amounts of board setup the deck is able to amass to its advantage, helping you out cards the Dark Worlds themselves couldn't. You can pick up every card I just mentioned for under $2 total. It's an amazing toolbox that you can practically use in any deck, meaning its value isn't only relegated to this deck alone, which the future cards in this list may be, so I recommend these cards first, so you can have a more comfortable base to work from to other decks. Speaking of another general card, if you're playing a deck that can amass a crazy amount of field presence, then most likely you're going to put in Saryuja's Skulldread, which if you're able to use 4 monsters with different names, you get the ability to draw 4 cards, then put 3 from your now huge hand into the deck. This allows you to fix your hand, making sure that you keep going through your combos and extend to even further possibilities. The cheapest version of this card costs $2, so if you're going to be set on going down the combo route in the future, keep this card around in your collection. It may prove useful. But what about going first? The only negate we can keep on board is a single fusion card that can't even respond to a quick play spell. Well, we can remedy that at the cost of 2 level 8 monsters. The Dark World Lords are all level 8. We can summon number 38, Hope Harbinger Dragon Titanic Galaxy, which can negate spell cards and redirect attacks to that big body. Again, this card isn't expensive anymore and only runs you $2 for the cheapest version. Now we're starting to get a bit more specific to this deck. A big inclusion, Akashic Magician, a $1 card which only takes 2 monsters of the same type to summon, which on Link Summon allows you to bounce the monsters it points to back into their owner's hands. If you can activate the effect of Ceruli to send a Silva, then using another 2 monsters and make the Akashic point to the Silva and the Ceruli, you can return both back into the hand and then do the loop all over again if you discard the Ceruli. This turns your deck into a pseudo FTK, looping every card your opponent controls until they have 1. It takes the theoretical situation I suggested earlier and makes it into an actual possibility. If you want to be mean to your opponents, then pick up this card. Security Dragon is another monster you can use to remove Link monsters from your opponent's field. Appaloosa can help set up negates. And finally, Underworld Goddess of the Closed World is a Link 5 that can use a monster your opponent controls as a material, like a kaiju, but in the extra deck and accessible at any time. If you have enough materials to make it, you put yourself in an amazing position to snowball the game. Not a bad deal for just $3. And that about wraps up the video. Thank you guys so much for watching until the end of one of these videos. It means a lot to me. And this is Puzzlemino passing turn. See you around.